Welcome to Co-Create Avatar's February e-zine, and I am Grandmother Kaariina of the Golden Reindeer Moon Lodge teaching. I want to give thanks to my mother's line. I want to give thanks to my father's line. I want to give thanks to the first shamans and medicine people of our tribe and of our lineage rooting into Mongolia. The message today is really about what are the principles and indicators for a successful and effective emergence? We are emerging from a mandated, vaccinated, power over war zone. And we have been waiting for the war to be over for generations. And as we emerge, we need to remember that we are the ones that the elders and the ancestors, the most compassionate ones, have been beaming their lights into from the stars, from the cycles of the moon, from the great teachings of the sun, and the central intelligence of this light. We have been reseeding ourselves in preparation for this emergence by returning to council, sometimes in dream time, and we don't remember, sometimes in a shamanic journey, and drummed into council, and we are called to remember, and sometimes in the unconsciousness. So we'll be walking around, and all of a sudden it'll be that person comes into our field, and it's as though there's a recognition. There's a primordial wisdom from the deep, deep, deep core of the earth that says, you're one of us. You're one of the ones that said yes. And so this teaching today is to remind ourselves that if we're experiencing distress, we are not attuned to all of the resources from heaven to earth to bring us to a grounded state of true service. You didn't do anything wrong. You never, ever need to polarize in right, wrong, good, bad. This is the time of the Venus. This is the time of Mars. And we really need to remember that there's a mandala of meeting the Mars mandala and the orbit, the Venus mandala and the orbit. And there's a meeting called heaven. There's space in between these planetary dispensation centers. And in that space, there's an agreement to meet. You know, if you look at the ceiling of the Basilica in Rome, you'll see God touching man's fingertip. This is the time for us to realize this is not a male God or a male receptor. This is a God, a creator self, touching one who's surrendering up, not just a man, but a woman, man, child, and four-legged winged ones, creepy crawlies. We're all meeting the creator self. And allow ourselves to recognize that when we come into conflict, we are denying that we are creating that conflict. It's like the Mexican straw puzzle where we put two fingers in and we try to pull away. No, you're right. No, you're wrong. Why aren't you listening to me? Where have you been for so long? I've been missing you. I'm horrified that this is happening. These are all indicators of distress caused by unexpressed grief. The 2.5 years is over, and we need a transition time and space, a sanctuary time and space to express grief. The confusion, the scaredness, the despair, the fury, frustration, anger, and the rage that we have allowed ourselves as co-creators to create a climate of such animosity and continuing to terrorize with militaristic, industrialized, and technologized weapons, including biotechnology weapons, to create a depopulation. Because isn't that our fear? Our fear is that there isn't room enough for us on planet Earth. So we've created a crisis called an ethical crisis, a moral crisis of fighting as a warrior, fighting the queen of love, Venus, instead of meeting the queen of love as a spiritual warrior dedicated to love, a Gaian warrior. a goddess lover warrior. When we're bringing the archetypes together, there's a transmutation in the cellular configuration of our bodies. And the body feels awkward. The body feels, wow, what's going on in my body? And here's a piece that I've offered for years as I've supported and mentored and coached people in emergencies and true spiritual awakening to spirit first and foremost. Do not go to emergency wards. Listen to the pain. Listen, 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 listen. Have a hot Epsom salts bath. Soften with the breath around the pain. Let the pain be the Father within, the Father that is releasing patriarchal power over, the Father that no longer wants to be God the Father that no longer wants to be the priest or the Pope. Let the patriarchy go. Listen to the pain. Distress. Next thing, you may feel mentally disturbed and you may go to receive mental health counseling. That's not a right or wrong, bad or good thing to do. We often in mental disturbances need to resource those who are well trained to hold space. My invitation in the message today is make a list of the qualities, not just the credentials, the qualities that your soul body needs in order to be fully held, not in comfort, not in convenience, not for an hour here or an hour there or 2 hours there and it costs you this much or you can write it off on BC or state health policies. It's not about that. What are the qualities that your soul requires in order to hold you safely, soundly, and in a confronting way that the mental disturbance can end when you clear the path? Third thing, when the disturbance settles deeper into the body, there will be a dysfunction organically. So right now, a lot of dysfunction is occurring in the liver, the bile duct, the gallbladder. We have a lot of gallstones and liver stones being created through our unexpressed and suppressed anger and believing that we have to go back to what was. We're not ever going back, my darlings. We're not ever going back. This is the mas grande purificado. And in the pancreas, because why? We've habituated sugar, addiction. Life has not been sweet. And so we've hopped under the chocolate bars. I did it 3 days ago with the Bounty Coconut Chocolate Bar. And then I felt very sick afterwards. So if your body is attuned to the divine order of it is a blueprint for a divine order to live in mastery, then you can start being aware of your diet. So diet helps to clear disturbance, helps to dissolve the organic dysfunction, helps to recreate something beyond distress, which is a new future where you are a creator self, as we are in co-creavatars. The next level. So the organic dysfunction can lead to death. And so many people right now are choosing to stay ignorant and in denial. We are not here to be saviors. We are not here to be martyrs. We are not here to be codependent caretakers of people who are choosing the dying path. Please resource Stephen and Andrea Levine's book called Conscious Living, Conscious Dying. And I was just saying to Jessica that I don't appreciate people giving me books when I'm in the middle of a path. But this book is really a path book. So again, look at the qualities of what you're reading. This is a book of path. It's based on Tibetan Buddhist teachings over 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years of teaching saying, be conscious, be aware, be awake to what it is that you're reading. Conscious Living, Conscious Dying is about live with dignity. Live a complete, fulfilled life. Don't keep yourself busy. That's the masculination. That's the power over the divine feminine that's emerging. The feminine is emerging as the mother of love. The feminine is emerging as Mother Gaia. The feminine is emerging as Tonontzin. The feminine is emerging as Freya. The feminine is emerging as Inanna. The feminine is emerging as Isis. The feminine is emerging is the great butterfly woman or changing woman. Women are emerging, and it's the feminine in men as well that's emerging in this awakening. So when we get to conscious living and conscious dying, we can't prevent death, but we can prolong the beauty and the graces, the grace and the love and the joy of our lives by living simply, by choosing a healthy diet, by redistributing our teachings and listening to at the feet of our elders and great masters and teachers, how they've lived their lives. What are our teachings being given to us as part of a legacy? As an elder, I have a legacy. I have many legacies, actually, and young people are my chosen legacy. I've just created a binder that I'm going to continue for 7 weeks now, called the Alchemical Garden Facilitator Training on the Wheel of Grief. And it's a profound legacy for those who are willing to take it on and to realize the levels of awakening, the levels of going down, the levels of going up, the levels of remembering, the levels of responsibility for expansion, conscious living, conscious dying. If someone is choosing to die, and I've been inviting people who have had grandmothers in their 80s, 90s, and no one yet in their early hundreds, but in asking them, how are you in your dynamic relationship with your ancient grandmother? These young people are able to reiterate the love. They're able to reiterate the service, the cookies. They reiterate the memories of the stories of this grandmother who's 94 years old. They're happy to share with me as an elder where their grandmas came from. They're not focusing on the trauma drama. They're not focusing on, did you get vaxxed or did you not get vaxxed, and what happened to your poor grandma when everybody got put behind bars. I'm inviting you as part of the emergence and awakening to sit with your old ones and ask them the stories of their lives, that their spirits live on through you. And that's an emergence into responsibility for conscious living, consciously loving, and conscious dying. Conscious dying. Let's put a few pieces in order here. It's so important for you to remember your first experience of death. Did your family actually journey together into the death of the first one that died in your family? Or was there separation and divisiveness? Did you become scattered the way my family became scattered when my dad died in 1993? And the lone wolves went howling instead of coming together and crying and holding each other. I love the traditions like the Jewish tradition where the rabbi leads a walk around the house of the dead person while the family of the dead person is fed by the Jewish community. And it goes on for days and days and days. Create your own tradition if you can't remember it. Research like an anthropological resourcing of death traditions so that you can remember, you can create something new as you die into the emergence of what's rising now. Many people will leave the form. They're not prepared for the full emergence. We are. In Co-Create Avatars, we are definitely prepared, and we're preparing to serve those who are ready to facilitate a conscious living, conscious loving, conscious conception, conscious raising of children, mindful practices, and reminding ourselves that these are great ancient teachings. Putting our houses in order, so important. No matter when you choose to actually leave, and in the Reiki tradition, Chirochiro Hayashi taught us that death is a conscious choice, especially heart attacks. Heart attacks and respiratory failure are consciously capable of responding to the healing codes and tapping. If people do not really facilitate their own process or seek help or continue to be lone wolves, their hearts will give out and they will die of some kind of respiratory discovery of a disease. They won't breathe. But in fact, if you look at psychoneuroimmunology, the soul, the psycho, and the neurology, the rehabituated patterns is what's creating the closure of the immune system and the heart. It keeps us from breathing fully and walking by the ocean, or enjoying the path up a glacier, or snowboarding or skiing. It prevents us from fulfilling our purpose and leaving a legacy and putting our houses in order. Putting our houses in order includes making sure our bills are paid, making sure our family has gathered around a living will, and sharing with our family, every single one in the birth family and expanded family, that we love them and that all is forgiven. Forgiveness is a great path. It's the gift of Jesús Christus in the Gnostic teachings. It was the gift of his crucifixion. On the cross, he looked at the thief and the murderer and said, "There go I. You are all that you divide yourself from. You are all that you deny. My grandfather murdered my grandmother. She suicided at the hands of her husband, and no one spoke about that in my family until I started offering her extended consciousness, her life emergence, her gift that she never gave the rest of us. I owned that gift, and I created 13 moons for the Golden Reindeer Moon Lodge and was initiated by a Norwegian shaman in the shamanic tradition. This is a long path. It could be a long and winding road. But take care, because around every wind, there could be a choice that you make to lose consciousness, to not be mindful, and create an awakening called an accident, called pain in your body, called an affair, called a brutality that you experience, in a violence, and you're violating your responsibility to put your house in order, to be mindful, to live consciously, to be aware of your breath, how you walk, and how you are on the planet. My last gift is from Tay, from Tiktahan. I was so privileged to just say to myself, there's nothing else I need to do. I need to pay attention to breathing in and breathing out, to breathing in and to breathing out. And what touched me deeply in the Root Monastery in Vietnam, when our great master teacher, a true living Buddha and a living Christ, passed over, was that he had put his house in divine order. He was living a very simple life, as monks and lamas and masters and elders and teachers do. Very, very simple. The woman that had been his guardian of his spirit was beside him when he stopped his last breath. And it was a conscious letting go. If you have an opportunity to tune in through YouTube, take a look at the privilege of humanity to render ourselves with humor to the grace of a passing over of a great one. As his body was carried from his cabin to the monastery, to the temple, there was only silence. There were no tears. There were mandalas and mantras, so that his spirit would move swiftly to the other side, where I'm sure he's already in service. And everyone had been given instructions, specifically the geshes surrounding him and closest to his body, that they were now Tay. They were now teacher. In Plum Village in France, a young man was Tay, and he was striking the Tibetan bowl, inviting people, women on one side, men on the other, Mars warriors, lovers, women, and remembering that the laneway, the aisle in between men and women is filled by Great Spirit. It's filled by God's self. It's filled by the prayers of our ancestors. It's filled by mantra, by 95 years of this great master's life. And at the very front of this Plum Village temple was a picture saying, Mother Gaia. Remind ourselves that he bowed before Mother Earth, Pachamama, Tonantzin. He bowed and said a prayer to Father Sun in the Buddha mind of the sky. And that's putting our houses in order and leaving a legacy. go back to Vietnam. So his body was wrapped in beautiful, I feel like it was silk cloth, and the body was placed very beautifully and gently into a 3 foot deep wooden casket. Very simple, not fancy. Nobody spent $5,000 as my grandfather did on my grandmother's casket. Very simply laid to rest. And on top of that were sandalwood chips, and on top of that was sandalwood resin. Sandalwood clears the mind of mental disturbance. Even in his dying and leaving us as a human race, the living Buddha, the living Christ, the living Te gave a living legacy. Clear your mental disturbance. There is no loss. This body is temporal. It's temporary. And when its time is up, we consciously choose to surrender. We don't fight at death's gate. We know the death gate has been opened as we prepare our legacy. Our destiny is fulfilled. Our purposes are fulfilled. Our love leaves us rising again. All of these beings were uplifted in spirit by his prayers and the mantras because we joined as Te. We became Te. We are the Te. And our discipline is to discipline our thoughts, to keep our hearts wide open, to realize there's more than enough time. We do not have to be busy. We are not here to win approval. No one ever rejected us. No one ever abandoned us. No one ever neglected us. What it is that we're opening to is limitation and negativity. And in the teaching of the mandala of life, the mandala of Christ, the mandala of Mother Gaia, the mandala of Buddha, the mandala of Muhammad, the mandala of Martin Luther King Jr., the mandala of Sri Yuktesvara, the mandala of Saint Germain, the mandala of my Mongolian elders and shamans. These wheels spin with our teachings, with our affirmations, with our mantras, Om Vajrayana Ahom. These wheels need to be walked upon, not scattering ashes here and there or continuing to put people's bodies in $5,000 metal trimmed caskets that take generations to pollute the earth because the disease is maintained there. We need to understand the dignity of dying and the dignity of death. In the Tibetan tradition, we're put on high wooden racks. And if the person has said a lot of mantra in their life, the king vulture shows up and eats the body remains before it's let to rot. It's feeding the vulture clan. Here, when the salmons die in their spawning path in August and September in British Columbia, the lady salmons go upstream and lay their beautiful roe, their red and ruby red jewels. And then the male come and they've changed their form. They've actually changed form and they often have beaks. And they come up and they lay their white milk of loving kindness on the red ruby roe to create a species that continues the evolutionary expression of 5 different kinds of salmon. When the salmon body get to the other side, they become covered with glacial silt, and they look like little floating statuaries, and they rot in the river. And then who comes? But the bear. The bear comes and eats the rest of the salmon body. The eagle comes and pecks at what the bear leaves, including the bones. And then what happens to the bones? The bones dissolve and feed the roots of the Sitka spruce, or the yellow cedar, or the Douglas fir. Every single aspect of our soul needs to remember we are food for our relations, all our relations. So to love ourselves and eat wisely and grow gardens and forage in the forest and eat mushrooms and to put tobacco circles around us to protect ourselves when we're amongst those who are forgotten, for they are truly our clients if they're willing to end their denial. These are all trainings and teachings in this February full moon. At the doorway of the mandorla, when Mars opens itself to meet Venus opening herself, goddess, lover, warrior, one, to come into the art of living, the art of dying, the art of loving in between. My darlings, may you have a juicy life. May you die well every single exhale. May you look around your houses now in the emergence in northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere. My spirit family is going into autumn, from summer into autumn. Here we're going from winter into spring. May we remember that the equator is an equality, that love is the great equalizer, that it's time to set aside our differences and to develop empathy and compassion for each other, for we're all having a hard time. And if we can share the tea, the breath, our love, our herbs, our gardens, our teachings, if we can share our listening hearts with the old ones, what is dying will die well. It will die wisely. It's over. The prophecy is that we have another at least 3, if not 4 more years of going through this tumultuous ending, because people are denying that it's ending. They want to go back to what's normal. What's normal was not helping Lady Gaia. What's normal was industrialization and militarization. What's normal is pharmaceuticalization, allopathy grounded and funded by war and emergencies. What's emerging is a spiritually awakened collective field. Earth is rising through us, my darlings. Listen, listen to the trees. They have tongues. Listen to the rocks. Listen to your soul's bodies. Go bury yourself in the earth. Feel her, love her, know her. Understand she wants you to be her consciousness, her awakening, her emergence. And yes, it will take in mankind time, many years, but there are many of us who are way showers. Our Taitas, 3 more died, passed over gloriously in Ecuador. Thank you, Taita. Thank you, Taita. Thank you, Taita. Big Bay brought his teaching through Jessica Mortel and honored the death of his master teacher in Egypt. Our beautiful Melodoma Some passed over and still gives his teachings, and his ashes have been sent to Africa to be honored as an elder ought to be honored. Grandmother Rita of Alaska passed over, and she's on my altar thanks to Nikki Kurt's storyboard, and I ask her to bless us. Grandmother Agnes Baker Pilgrim passed over 2 years ago, and I ask her to bless the grief wheel that we grounded in Cave Junction in Oregon. The authentic abundance that we offer Thursdays every second month for 21 days is honoring Tonantzin and held by my Abuela Margarita, who passed over a year ago, January, and Abuela Malinali, who passed over a year ago, last October. Have an altar, my darlings. Put on your altar not only your own beseeching God to help you, because you are God creator self. It's not about that. Have your prayer be in gratitude to the old ones, to your families, to your beloved ones. See them, know them, feel them, mend them. Put the family hoop back together again, and they will meet you there. And have your elders passed over to offer prayers to all that it is that your endeavor is about in this lifetime. Money will not take you through the death gate. Final thought. Our father, Pentipali Valdemar Saarinen, died in a dying room just off the corridor of the ICU in Toronto West Hospital in Ontario. He was on life support. I was holding his big toes. What I realized is that he's naked under a pale yellow sheet. No matter what he achieved in this lifetime, and he achieved much, no matter how much money was accumulated by my mother, his financier, and activities and achievements by our father. He's naked under a pale yellow sheet. It's not about the money. It's about the naked truth. It's about how well did my dad love. He loved us so much that his love passed through me, and I transmogrified his hate, his anger, his suppressed grief. It took me 1.5 to 2 years, and I did it in community. The grief is a tidal wave, my darlings. It's not just a wave. It's a tide. It comes according to these full moons today and tomorrow. Let grief rise. Go to the forests. Go to the gardens. Go to the lakes and the seas. Go to the waters. Yell and scream. Do not suppress it. Do not deny it. Do not habituate it in some kind of thought pattern that takes you to a bottle, or to cocaine, or to heroin, or to prostitution. That's your anger. It's your grief. Have great empathy and compassion for yourself. We love you as elders. We surround you as elders. We care for you as elders. We are your elders, and you are the incoming flow of of these teachings for all our relations, to my mother line, to my father line, to the first shamans and medicine people of our lineage, to the co-creavatars, to our team, to those who are surrendering up to the heart of the emergence of love. May we meet in the Mandorla, the place of the Venus Piscicus, the place of that which is being born again through us. Oh my Gaia, oh my Gaia, oh my Gaia. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Thank you so much, Jessica.